Hello, my name is Michelle Lusardi, and I'm extremely honored to present the 5th annual Carole B. Lewis Distinguished Lecture to you, my colleagues and friends of the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy. I was completely astonished when Dr. Chola called with the news, but my joy quickly gave way to panic. How might I stimulate growth of our wonderful profession when I am more a worker bee than a visionary? It seemed an impossible task. Let me start with a heartfelt thanks to the Academy's board and awards committee for this wonderful recognition, as well as to those who were responsible for my nomination, Dr. Kevin Choi, Dr. Stacy Fritz, and Dr. Leslie Allison. They have great faith that I'll come up with something interesting to say. Keep your fingers crossed that I do. It's incredibly daunting to follow previous lecturers. Dr. Carole Lewis had incredible vision for the care of older persons by physical therapists that shapes the Academy by refining expectations about what's possible in aging. Dr. Dale Avers' tremendous passion challenged us to I'm going to start that one again. I'll start that whole slide again.
Okay.
It is incredibly daunting to follow previous lecturers. Dr. Carole Lewis's incredible vision for the care of older persons by physical therapists has shaped the Academy by reframing expectation about what's possible in aging. Dr. Dale Avers' tremendous passion challenges us to elevate and evaluate how we think and behave as champions for our patients. Dr. Richard Bohannon's phenomenal zeal for evaluating evidence to guide examination and improve efficacy of our intervention facilitates knowledge translation as we care for older adults. And Dr. Bill Staples' dedication to serving patients and peers and willingness to ask important questions in difficult situations has been a model for us all. I count each of these incredible physical therapists as mentor, colleague, and friend. I sincerely hope that my words will honor the foundation that they have provided for us. I would like to dedicate this lecture to my beautiful and gracious mother, Elizabeth Willett Pullen, who left us at 93 years young this time last year. She has given me an incredible foundation and believed in all my endeavors. I know that she's smiling down on us from heaven today. It might be worth taking a minute to look at what's influencing my perspective before I start in on this lecture. I have crossed the magic boundary of aging, as evidenced by my white hair and my Medicare card. I've retired from academic and clinical practice and am working on discerning what to do in the years ahead of me. I've championed older adults for nearly 50 years as a physical therapist and have been an advocate and caregiver for beloved aging parents. So I'm representative of the many older adults that we care for. This lecture is drawn from my experiences in our community in an attempt to inform the future of our beloved profession. The literature reviewed for this lecture has been quite a catalyst, prompting an action-oriented path for us to consider. My initial objectives are integrated throughout this talk, but my reading has led me down a slightly different path. Today, I'm asking you to understand the challenges we face in our aging society. Think like gerontologists as well as geriatricians in planning for our professional future and caring for our older patients. Put our money where our mouths are to own the understanding of the movement system as the essential expertise that we contribute to the healthcare system. And finally, put our expertise into action by establishing a yearly mobility wellness clinic as routine care for older adults and embrace the opportunity to collect big data and useful information generated by the mobility wellness check as translational evidence for decision-making. Gerontology is the scientific, multidisciplinary, collaborative, holistic study of the aging process. Gerontologists have explored the cognitive, emotional, social, psychological, spiritual, and biological and physical aspects of aging, and have applied such to social and health policy and programs. Geriatrics falls under gerontology's umbrella as the branch of healthcare focused on understanding, preventing, and managing disease in later life. Like our own academy, the American Geriatrics Society encourages geriatricians in all health professions to provide high-quality, person-centered care to improve health, independence, and quality of life for older adults. Physical therapists, as experts in the movement system, are the health professionals best prepared to impact an older adult's ability to be active and to participate, whether they're well or dealing with illness, impairment, or disability that hampers their movement. If we, members of the APTA Geriatrics, are truly committed to optimizing the experience of aging, we must be both geriatricians and gerontologists in order to provide care from the biopsychosocial perspective. Older adults are the most health and functionally diverse groups of the US population. Later life may extend 30 or more years beyond eligibility for Medicare, and a great deal of change can happen over that time. The young old, those 65 to 74, are generally healthy. The old, those 75 to 84, often face management of chronic diseases, and the very old, those 85 and older, are very vulnerable to functional decline. Now, aging occurs at different rates within and across these categories, influenced by genetics, physical and mental health, nutrition, weight, smoking and alcohol use, income, level of education, cognitive capacity, access to healthcare, and exposure to stress, accidents, and violence. That's quite a list to sort through in our clinical decision-making. Currently, 52 million older adults live in the United States. That's almost 18% of our population. Life expectancy at 65 is an additional 19 years. The number of older adults grew from 10% in 1970 to 17% in 2020, with the most rapid increase in those over 85. There were 32,000 centenarians in 1980 and more than 90,000 today. The United Nations and the US Census tell us that population aging is determined by the years it takes to increase from 7 to 14% of the population, 65 years and older. This took only 69 years in the United States. Looking ahead the next 40 years, 95 million people will be 65 and older. That's 25%, or 1 in 4, in the US, and 600,000 of those will be centenarians. Are we really ready to meet the health, wellness, and rehab needs of this incredibly diverse group? Older adults present multiple interacting health conditions. Such multi-comorbidity creates a long problem list that challenges those providing care. Care can fragment. Specialists focus on diseases within their scope, increasing the risk of polypharmacy and adverse outcomes. Regardless of what brings an older adult to us, elders are most concerned with being self-reliant and moving effectively. As movement experts in healthcare, we play the key role in facilitating mobility, restoring and sustaining function, and recommending modifications to help our elders be independent as long as possible. Aging involves senescence of tissues, as well as persistent loss of regenerative and bioprotective mechanisms over a long lifetime. Listed here are a few of the many hypotheses that attempt to explain physiological aging. What we do know is that physiological aging, although occurring at different rates in each of us, is inevitable. Physiological aging has two dimensions. Primary aging is irreversible, inevitable physiological process, and secondary aging results from illnesses, perhaps reversible or preventable, that are common in later life. Some theorists add a third dimension, a sudden decline just prior to death. Literature tells us that level of education, a sense of life satisfaction, meaningful social engagement, good mental health, personal resilience, and adequacy of financial resources are all potential positive mediators of the aging process. Note that the lack of any of these mediators has a potential negative impact on aging. We often read about healthy, successful, or optimal aging. The World Health Organization defines aging as the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in old age. The MacArthur Foundation defines 3 determinants of successful aging: the absence of disease and related disability, high functional and cognitive capacity, and active, meaningful social engagement. Now, this approach provides a snapshot of health and function, but doesn't capture the influence of development and relationships over one's lifetime as contributors. Missing perspectives include someone's personal characteristics, their race, their gender, and socioeconomic status, social factors such as current economic conditions, access to healthcare, and access to transportation, and the interpersonal environment, their family structure and friendships and social support. The folks from MacArthur now urge greater attention to successful aging at the societal level from a lifespan perspective, even as North America and Europe have transformed into aging societies. While an individual can take steps toward healthy aging, as in this model from the University of Pittsburgh, policies, strategies, and programs are needed to ensure education, employment, retirement, healthcare, housing, and public services are in place to meet the needs of the entire population, especially the growing group of older adults. Note that many of the models of successful or healthy aging consider living with a chronic disease or disability of failure. As someone who has invested a lifetime of energy into rehabilitation, I certainly have an issue with that assumption. Most of the adults we encounter in healthcare settings are not aging well. Constant exposure to those burdened by poor health and disability influences our expectations about prognosis and efficacy of intervention for all older adults. Age bias has 3 dimensions: cognitive, which is based on stereotypes; emotional, which gives rise to prejudice; and behavioral, that results in discrimination. Many studies exclude older adults of advanced age, limiting application of evidence in clinical decision-making. This despite the NIH's Inclusion Across the Lifespan initiative that requires enrollment of old and very old adults in clinical trials. Attitudes are positively influenced by education and intergenerational contact with well elders, especially for adolescents and young adults. While entry-level educational programs strive to expose students to older adults across the spectrum of those healthy and high-functioning to those frail and functionally compromised, there is still much work to be done. Now let's turn our attention to a few gerontological theories. Why? Because models and frameworks are scaffolds for understanding phenomena. They help us by linking key concepts, organizing our thinking, mapping out key factors, and incorporating the multiple dimensions that caring for older adults requires. There are many developmental and lifespan models trying to explain the social and emotional, cognitive, and psychological aspects of aging. Gerontologists have been trying to describe the experience of later life for almost 100 years. Such models proved foundational in my graduate work and positively influenced my clinical practice and research. And I'd like us to consider just a few of them. Erik Erikson contends that the developmental tasks of each stage of life is integration of one's personal needs with often conflicting societal demands. Effective resolution of such discord engenders development of new strengths or virtues. Erikson's psychological developmental crisis of later life is termed ego integrity versus despair, with the emergent virtue of wisdom. We elders review our lives, evaluate our accomplishments and our disappointments, and contemplate our eventual passing. We may revisit unresolved crises and virtues from earlier life stages. This may be especially poignant for elders dealing with illness or injury that threatens functional ability, independence, and self-determination. Have you seen such revisiting in your interaction with the older folks in your care? Consider that the need to be generative, a characteristic of midlife, continues as an important determinant of life satisfaction in later life, but now achieved through pro-social, community-oriented involvement rather than work. Another theory, continuity theory, holds that personality remains stable over one's lifespan, in contrast to the step-like stages of Erikson's model of psychological development. Older adults adjust to changes using the strategies they employed over their entire lifespan. This is especially true with the threatening or disruptive circumstances that impact someone's sense of self, independence, and social connectedness. Continuity posits that re-examine of past experiences fosters stability in an older person's inner or psychological and outer or social worlds. Personality, core values, interests, and social roles continue even when facing age or illness-related imposed adjustments. Older adults reinterpret previous experiences when facing decisions about modifying living arrangements and lifestyles to ensure their sense of identity remains consistent. A key component of continuity's adaptive process is reminiscence. Familiarity serves as a vehicle for adaptation for those facing uncertainty or impending change. This provides emotional gratification. The response to this change is oriented towards self-reinvention, engaging in new activities, or self-preservation, replacing a valued activity with an agreeable substitute, as mechanisms to sustain their purpose and meaning. How might we, in our interactions with older adults, facilitate a sense of continuity for those contending with events and that significantly alter ability and sense of self? Might incorporating reminiscence about previous function while asking for adaptation of movement in the face of altered resources facilitate our success? Gerontologists also seek to explain the social roles of older adults. Disengagement theory, a structural functional model from the 1950s, defined the developmental task of later life as voluntarily letting go of social roles to the benefit of upcoming generations and in preparation for death. Disengagement was based on traditional gender roles, men in the workplace and women on the home front. Retirement triggered disengagement for men, while women's caring roles within the family continued. Disengagement stirred a great deal of controversy and did contribute to the recognition of ageism in our society. In response, activity theory proposed that engagement in meaningful pursuits and social relationships contribute to life satisfaction and successful aging. A strong sense of motivation and satisfaction occurs when elders are involved in valued activities or role. Activity model misapplied has negative outcomes. Participation in formal, structured activities designed to keep someone busy, but not meaningful to the aging individual, contributes to diminished life satisfaction and depression. Recent activity-related work suggests that sustaining functional ability and mobility are key determinants of life satisfaction. Many older adults face incredibly difficult circumstances with grace and fortitude, reaching positive outcomes otherwise considered unlikely. This is resilience, the ability to navigate, bounce back, maintain or regain high levels of well-being despite adversity threatening health and function. Resilient folks effectively negotiate, adapt to, and manage the large and small stressors that they face in their lives. Given what is known about primary and secondary physiological aging, as well as the likelihood of the loss of spouse and friends to death as age advances, older adults become more vulnerable to experiencing adversity the longer they live. Resilience and well-being are essential in adding life to years in the presence of increasing longevity. Determinants of resilience include individual characteristics and resources, such as positive outlook, being optimistic, being willing to engage, having a sense of purpose, among others. Availability of psychological and social support, and the social and physical environments in which older adults function. Resilience as a protective, compensatory, or coping resource develops over one's lifetime. The capacity to enhance resilience does not have an upper age limit. Physical resilience, or biomedical health status, is a powerful indicator of underlying physiological reserve, while psychosocial resources influence life satisfaction and healthy aging. The World Health Organization now embraces this biopsychosocial perspective, shifting away from a pathology-oriented approach toward a function-centered model of health and care. For optimal outcome of our interventions, we must consider the older individual's intrinsic capacity, their physical and cognitive resources, the physical and social environments in which they function, the context of that individual's life, and interactions between the person and their environment. More about this to come. How can we facilitate resilience and intrinsic capacity for the older adults we work with? In the studies with elders with amputation, determinants of resilience included effective coping skills, cognitive flexibility, optimism, skills for facing fear, and social support. Building resilience and capacity are clearly part of the rehabilitation process. Resilience is a powerful predictor of psychological and social function for persons with chronic disability. Do you include building resilience in your plan of care for older adults? Now let's consider a model that looks at the interaction of the person and the environment. The ecological theory of aging provides a resource for clinical decision-making and intervention planning to foster resilience and adaptation for the older adults that we care for. It has helped shape my interaction with older patients and family members. It considers how personal competence and environmental press influences function within physical and social environments. Competence, the enduring characteristics enabling an older person to function effectively, include overall health, physical and perceptual ability, intelligence, personality characteristics, the ability to problem solve, resilience, access to effective social support and/or to assistance as needed, as well as financial resources. Press emerges from challenges impacting on function in physical and psychological and social environments. Stressors related to work, leisure, self-care, and social roles both exist on a low to high continuum. Best fit occurs when competence and press are relatively matched in the blue, resulting in positive affect and flexibility and ability to adapt effectively. With low-level mismatch, fit falls into the yellow marginal zones, where affect and outlook are less positive and the ability to adapt behavior to match challenge compromised. Significant mismatch produces negative affect and maladaptive behavior. Being in this condition for long periods of time contributes to compromised health, poor decision-making, and lower life satisfaction. Recognizing when someone is beyond the limits of fit, showing anxiety, restlessness, difficulty concentrating, apathy, disinterest, and other things like that, should trigger us to reevaluate the intensity of our interactions and interventions. For those with cognitive impairment, for example, the level of stimulation in the immediate environment significantly influences functional performance. A complex hospital, rehab, or long-term care setting, likely quite comfortable for us, may feel overwhelming for older persons and their family members, not understanding the unique roles of the myriad of professionals who come in and out of their rooms to provide care. Speaking a bit more slowly, sitting down to be eye to eye, providing opportunity for clarification, and calming touch are examples of strategies that modify the environment in which an encounter takes place. Expressing empathy for the situation by what we say, by centering our focus and attention, and by using effective interested body language are also tools to help the level of press that a patient might be experiencing. What happens when level of challenge and stimulation, or the intensity, is insufficient? If we underestimate an individual's resources, their engagement in our interventions will certainly be compromised. When we encounter apathy, disinterest, boredom, depression, hopelessness, anger, frustration, and negative affect, we should assess the press of the environment, interventions, and expectations to ensure they truly match an elder's personal resources and competence. Why consider these gerontological frameworks in physical therapy practice? As the link between medicine and function, we use many types of knowledge and gather evidence from many sources in order to effectively apply our clinical expertise. Well-informed clinical decisions require us to consider what we observe in our examination, patient and family preferences and goals, and our hard-earned professional judgment. Models of aging and health recognize that health status and quality of life emerge from the interplay of the physiological, psychological, and social aspects of a person's life. To achieve optimal outcome of physical therapy care, we must incorporate each of these dimensions as part of our evaluation. They provide the best evidence we need for clinical decision-making. This is the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy's mission statement. Let's reflect on the qualities necessary to achieve this mission. Take a minute to consider the characteristic of colleagues whom we admire and try to emulate as effective in geriatrics. What are the key words that come to your mind, regardless of whether you're in a clinical setting, are educators, or researchers? We are the experts on the movement system, motion analysis, and interventions focused on function. Dr. Shirley Sarman challenged us to adopt this perspective in her 1998 Macmillan lecture, but we did not fully own it until recently. Per the biopsychosocial health model, function happens across each of the environments we inhabit: our physical and biological sphere, our psychological sphere, the way we think about ourselves and our capacity and potential, and our social sphere, our various social roles and the expectation and concerns of others. We understand movement as a complex behavior occurring in specific functionally oriented circumstances, accomplished via integration of body systems to initiate, sustain, and adapt movement to meet specific functional goals. This understanding of movement is not yet effectively integrated into the medical pathological perspective. For us, movement is medicine. What makes us experts on movement? Look at the foundation that we have in exercise science, motor learning, motor control, and movement analysis. Look at our knowledge of anatomy, of pain science, and the impact of various pathologies on movement and function. I am not certain that the rest of the medical community or the folks who come to us for care really understand all that we might contribute. While medical diagnoses focuses on pathologies that threaten health, we focus on how an individual functions, performs national activities, and participates in valued roles apart from their medical diagnoses. Many APTA academies and academic programs are working to define essential movement, strategies for movement analysis, and ways to communicate and document movement system diagnoses for colleagues in other fields and healthcare system payers. The Geriatric Movement System Task Force, for example, is presenting a poster integrating the patient-client management model from the Guide to Physical Therapy Practice, the World Health Organization's biopsychosocial model of health, and the Geriatric 5Ms in a poster session on Friday afternoon. So my question to you is, do you define yourself as an expert in movement? We are members of an evolving health profession. Professions are groups with special expertise and skills and a well-recognized body of knowledge founded on research, education, critical thinking, and significant training. We know firsthand that becoming a professional requires perseverance, dedication, a great deal of time and expense, and a commitment to lifelong learning for ongoing formal qualification. Members of professional disciplines adhere to ethical standards, employ their special knowledge and skills in service of others, for us, our patients, students, and colleagues, as well as our greater community. The public and colleagues in other fields tend to respect professionals based on the time, effort, and commitment required to successfully enter the field. The APTA, as our professional body, endorses a code of ethics and defines core values essential to ensure provision of safe, accessible, cost-effective, and evidence-based care. APTA's professional expectations are not only to provide care to patients and to be involved in our professional organization, but also in working to meet societal needs. With the rapid aging of our society, we must be involved in this third expectation. Stay tuned for a challenge that will address all three of these areas. Is physical therapy a vocation? Vocation is a call or summons to a particular function or task, a means to achieve fulfillment in serving others, work that we are drawn to and well suited for, and to which we devote a great deal of time and energy. Given the pace, level of stress, and complexity of our work, defining physical therapy as a vocation may be protective from burnout, emotional fatigue, and cynicism. Viewing our work as vocation enhances our sense of accomplishment in serving others. I recently learned a bit about Japanese perspective ikigai, a strategy to find one's life purpose. Ikigai helps define one's personal meaning of life in relation to our talents, passions, profession, as well as our support of the wider world. Could this be an approach to help our understanding of self as a physical therapist? We certainly are seekers of possibility for elders facing adversity, be it the pain of arthritis, acute neurological events or chronic diagnoses, cardiopulmonary compromise, injury, osteoporosis, and sarcopenia, among other medical diagnoses. To seek is to go in search of, discover, and to find. The possibilities that we seek are grounded in movement and function, to build capacity and ability, to see a patient's potential, to find alternatives for adaptation or compensation when faced with impairment or disability, to believe in the likelihood of recovery and success. Dr. Beth Fisher, in presenting the 24th Maley Lecture in 2019, urged us to discover the patient's known and unknown movement capacity. Movement is goal-directed. Many movement options are available for any given goal, albeit we tend to choose options with the least energy cost. Rather than looking for impairments leading to abnormal movement, Dr. Fisher proposes that movement analysis ought to recognize abnormal movement as a self-imposed compensation that, in the long run, limits efficacy of movement. Limiting compensation may uncover an individual's masked capacity, thus facilitating discovery of other abilities responsive to intervention. Dr. Fisher's lecture is well worth the read. We frequently advocate for our patients and their families regarding the need for intervention, length of stay, discharge disposition, and justification of durable medical equipment. To advocate is to support, argue for a cause, and plead in favor of a course of action. An advocate intercedes on behalf of another, works for the interest of an individual or group, recognizes the rights and needs of others, provides clarification, educates, and advises those who might not understand the healthcare system fully, hopefully steering them through complexities and avoiding miscommunication. We also advocate to influence public policy impacting on older adults in hopes of improving community health, optimizing access to necessary care, and reducing health disparities. Our multifaceted role often requires us to be a mentor, a positive guiding influence in another's life, a wise and trusted counselor, a guide, tutor, or coach. Mentorship is essential in education, in transition from student to clinician, the decision to pursue a residency or specialty certification, and the shift from clinical to academic or administrative roles. Effective mentors facilitate clinical reasoning, a complex and often subconscious process, by encouraging self-reflection and by rendering implicit assumptions and thought processes explicit. As much as we mentor students and peers, we also mentor people we provide care for. Using principles of motor learning and guiding questions, we coach patients with mobility issues to discover alternative means to meet their movement goals. Have you recognized yourself in definitions we have just reviewed? What other hats do we wear? We are educators of patients, students, and peers. We are users and producers of evidence. We are change agents, team players, and collaborators. We are health promoters, lifelong learners, and critical thinkers. We are motivators, consultants and advisors, and movement diagnosticians, as well as pain managers, administrators, and record keepers. I am sure that I've missed a few of our hats. What other hats do you wear when approaching your to-do list? The APTA Geriatrics catchphrase challenges us to age on. This command captures a sense of positive possibility in the face of a culture that values youth, a healthcare system that seems to prioritize cost containment rather than promoting health, and the realities of the aging process. We are charged to contribute to the development of our profession and to optimize the experience of aging. How frequently do we take the time to assess just how and how well we are working toward these goals? Our leaders have identified 4 facets on which to focus: to deal with the cumbersome reimbursement system that does not keep up with best practice in physical therapy, to call out ageism and be an active part of shaping quality of life as people like me age on, to spread the word about how we contribute not only to rehab, but also healthy aging and quality of life for older adults, and to grow in numbers and improve available resources as the member of the healthcare team focused on movement and function. The challenge I am about to present to you addresses each of the Academy's strategic outcomes. It will always also help create resources to improve our practice, to facilitate knowledge translation, and to advocate for the needs of the older adults that we care for. Why put our energy and resources into such a project? A yearly mobility wellness check benefits multiple audiences, the individuals that we care for and their families, by catching small declines in function before they become problematic. Our practices across multiple settings by providing opportunity to build positive community relations while providing an essential service. Our educational programs, by providing integrated clinical and service learning experiences, exposing students to older adults while sharpening their assessment skills. The understanding of our broader medical community about physical therapists as movement scientists, as an entry point into the healthcare system for older adults, an opportunity for collaboration and referral across disciplines. And clinicians are researchers who work to provide evidence to enhance our clinical judgment, and clinicians in making informed decisions about the need for and outcome of our interventions. A small feasibility study is underway in an outpatient private practice setting, and so far, so good. The mobility wellness check includes 4 familiar continuous scale measures with well-established validity and reliability. Known minimal detectable difference, MDD, and/or minimal clinically important difference, MCID, values, and norms by age and gender, at least for community living older adults. An activity questionnaire would also be useful. Each of these measures is inexpensive, uses easily available equipment, and does not require a lot of space. The screening can be completed in less than 15 minutes for most community living elders, even with mild to moderate mobility issues. Those in assisted living or long-term care, however, may require a bit more time. You may wonder why I'm not recommending the ordinal level short physical performance battery, SPPB, as outlined in the ICOPE screening. So here comes a math and statistics refresher for you. Continuous measures, as compared to ordinal measures, are more precise and accurate. With a true zero, there is less inherent measurement error. They are also more statistically powerful using parametric statistics. They are easily interpreted clinically and better able to detect meaningful change. Because they have smaller standard error values, their minimal detectable difference and MCID values are also small. This means that change in performance, whether decline or improvement, will be identified quickly. The MCID of the ordinal SPPB is 3 of 12 points, which is a 25% change of maximal score. Walking speed with a mean of 1.1 standard deviation 0.09 meters per second in community living older adults has an MCID of 0.1 meters per second, which is only 10% of the mean. Based on this comparison, which measure would you choose to determine if your intervention was effective? The MDDs for 5 times sit to stand, the chair rise task, is between 1.3 and 2.5 seconds. Evidence supporting the use of walking speed and time sit to stand to identify and quantify sarcopenia and frailty is quite strong. TUG differentiates fallers from non-fallers in retrospective studies, but unfortunately not so much in prospective studies. Comparing single task TUG times to manual, carrying a manual TUG, carrying a full glass of water, and/or cognitive TUG, counting backwards by serial 3s, may indicate the cost of divided attention on movement. Although the 4-square step test has been used to assess balance in persons with amputation, frailty, stroke, Parkinson's disease, osteoporosis, and joint replacement, normative data and evidence of responsiveness is, as of yet, minimal. So it requires a bit more investigation. It certainly has a lot of promise. How might we interpret performance on these screening measures? The goal of the mobility wellness check is to identify persons at risk of functional decline before impairment or limitation of movement needed for effective community function becomes problematic. At the population level, performance on continuous measures likely follows a normal distribution, with 50% of folks performing at the mean or better. We might say they are in good shape. 34% would fall between the mean and one standard deviation below. These folks are likely vulnerable to decline, and 16% would perform a standard deviation below the mean, and we would consider these guys in the midst of decline, needing intervention. This is a powerful framework. In her 2022 Malley lecture, Dr. Sue Whitney challenges us to embrace the use of big data to guide our clinical decision-making, using big data to detect movement issues before they become problematic, monitor status over time, and prevent future decline and disease. She acknowledges that we don't yet have the enormous data sets required to do these things, but encourages all of us to be involved in such data collection. Perhaps we can be. Implementation of the mobility wellness check provides an incredible opportunity to begin to build a necessary data set in geriatrics. Think of the data we could generate by such a program. Right now, most studies using these measures involve community living elders. If enough of us take this on across a variety of settings, we would be able to develop norms not only by age and gender, but also by setting and medical diagnosis. We could then tailor our goals and interpret our outcome measures tied to the subpopulation of older adults that we care for. This would be an invaluable resource for us all. Getting the mobility wellness check off the ground is likely to be a multi-year collaborative task involving many of us, a true long-term goal to commit to. Likely there would be two streams of effort, a gathering of evidence stream and a negotiate with CMS and Medicare stream. As I'm better at the clinical research stuff, I will defer how to deal with CMS to those who work in the public policy parts of our world. Year one is the foundational year, assuming board approval, that is, planning and getting ready for implementation of the mobility wellness check, appointing a work group, clearly defining objectives and tasks, developing policy and procedures, including data collection strategies and recruitment of data collection sites. Framed as secondary analysis of routine collected de-identified data, the Mobility Wellness Check research project would likely be compliant with Institutional Review Board standards. Our public policy team members would begin interacting with lawmakers and the CMS. In year two, we go after the data. We will run a pilot for a month or two to ensure that systems for data reporting are working as planned, and then implement the mobility wellness check across all the sites that signed up to participate. I'm thinking a monthly data drop would be manageable for clinicians and for those of us who like to play with data. The efforts of our policy folks in negotiations with CMS and Congress will be ongoing. Year three focuses on evaluating the data we have collected, as well as preparing manuscripts, news releases, other publicity, and of course, continuing conversation about adopting the mobility wellness check as a yearly required visit to PT, and this with our CMS and our legislatures. By year four, fingers crossed, CMS will have adopted our suggestions for the mobility wellness check. We will then turn to translating what we've learned into clinical practice. The scale of this proposal may feel overwhelming. As a nearly 40-year member of the Academy, I have witnessed and participated in large projects and tasks to the benefits of colleagues and patients. We can certainly do this if we put our collective minds to it. Clinicians and practices and agencies can incorporate the mobility wellness check into routine care. For the policy folks among us, this is an opportunity to change practice in addressing an unmet need for the seniors that we serve. For academics, this provides opportunity for integrated clinicals and service learning projects. For those of us who love playing with data, this is an intellectual and creative challenge to develop and manage a data repository. For researchers and statistics experts among us, it's the enjoyment of dealing with big data. Our publications and website will be essential for making our findings accessible. And finally, APTA Geriatrics will help us translate what we come up with into practice with programming, continuing education, journal club, and in other creative ways. Let's do this. I've been quite patient with my meandering this morning. I've shared quite a bit, so let's take a minute to review what we've accomplished. We have refreshed our understanding of population aging and the challenges facing our aging society. We have reviewed how aging as disease state has morphed into expectations of healthy, successful, and active aging. We have considered how primary aging, which is inevitable, and secondary aging, that's disease vulnerability, influence life satisfaction. Thinking like gerontologists, we have explored developmental models of aging and concepts such as they expand our understanding of lived aging. We've considered the value of resilience and the factors that facilitate it. We've explored the interaction of competence, press, and fit to guide intensity of our intervention. We've reflected on characteristics that inspire, empower, and empower us as physical therapists. And most importantly, we've been challenged to take leadership in implementation of the mobility wellness check to enhance aging on and better serve the elders we care for, and to build the big data set that the mobility wellness check will generate to become the evidence we need to improve clinical decision-making and caring for older adults. Thank you for the opportunity to share my passion for working with older adults and for clinical research with you. I hope you have been at least a little inspired by my ideas and look forward to continued discussion and debate about them.